I'm never sure how to convey this to people. Yes, it's true, even for you. I get it. You know the layout of your own home. You know how the rooms connect. The paths you walk every day are part of your very being. They're the back of your hand. Your kids have marked their heights in blue crayon over the years on a Victorian door jamb. Your fridge lights up your entire shitty apartment. Your loft is just one room. And yet, deep down, you know the truth. Because you're asking me. Your house has a hallway. The second question is always, of course, how do you know? To which I respond, I know because of how I found the hallway in my house. And you can find your hallway too. It began so simply. I didn't even know what I discovered. I'd been awake for several minutes, but my mind had been ice skating forcefully back and forth between dreams and work stress. Eventually, I realized I had to pee. I shot up in bed and carefully climbed out so as to not wake my girlfriend. No, right. Never mind. God damn it. I got to the bathroom doorway pretty easily, considering it was completely dark. I stepped out into the hallway, not that hallway, of course, expecting to kick the cat. No cat, but good. Somehow, he must not have woken up at the first potential sign of my activity. The new automated feeder I'd bought must have finally been working its way into his routines. Carefully stepping my way forward in the dark to avoid potentially crushing him, and that was the key. Mind you, not the cat, but the disruption in steps. I got lost. Yeah, I got lost in my own home. Don't judge me. I'm not an idiot. It happens the instant you alter how you move in the dark. Hypothetically, you know your general location within a certain bounds. Obviously, I hadn't run a mile, so I had to be between the flower vase she'd put on that random little table and the pile of wedding gifts I'd never opened. I reached out my hands and found the wall, a nice little assurance that I was still in the physical reality I'd known all my life. But then, I made the mistake of following it by touch. A wall can't lie to you, right? It's the same bumpy paint, or, in your house, the same smooth wallpaper. Maybe the same dusty stone if you live in a castle, like some sort of asshole. I sought the way forward, running my fingers along, step by uncounted step as one does, until I thought I was right in front of my bathroom door in the dark. I let go of the wall and stepped. What? Left? Forward? Maybe even right. The way the wall itself should have prevented. That's the point. I don't know which way I went, and that's how I found the hallway. There was no indication whatsoever. There was only the dark and the quiet. My bare feet on gradually thickening dust, my ears hammering with the deepening pound of my own heart, the blackness swirling and pulsing in my vision with nothing more than shimmering nothingness. My fingers moved through the cold open air, and my foremost thought was that impossible rejected concern. Where the hell am I? I had to be in the house, certainly. I had to be somewhere between the pile of wedding gifts I'd never opened and the bathroom door, without a doubt. I had to be somewhere in the hall, outside my bedroom. The door I was looking for had to be... I reached left. I reached forward. I reached right. My pulse began to race in my warming ears as I questioned my limited senses. Something in me told me that I'd stepped too far to have failed to reach the bathroom door. Something in me told me that I should be able to fling my hand out and grasp wood or wall. My logical human brain was calling bullshit on this. So I left the wall, like a moron, and took a step forward, seeking reassurance. I took a second step, then a third, a fourth, a fifth. Before I took the sixth step, it occurred to me that there was no location in my tiny house where I could take 6 steps and not reach the opposite wall. I was pretty sure that my lack of money for a bigger house was the main reason she left me. This pitch black spaciousness didn't make sense. I'd grabbed my phone on pure instinct, I'd shoved it in my pajama pants pocket out of habit. I'd been intending on, while peeing, watching some ads on the shitty mobile game I was playing, the same way I always did. I hadn't even thought about it, but when I pulled it out of my pocket and hit the power button, nothing happened. Shit. Right. I'd fallen asleep without plugging it in. At the time, I knew I should have, but I just didn't. It was dead. Heart pounding a little faster, I reversed course without turning, my hand stretched backwards. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps, 5 steps, 6 steps, 7 steps, 8 steps? I reached out in every direction, hoping desperately to find bumpy paint with my fingertips. There was only cool, churning air, silence, blackness. I finally broke the silence with a whispered, "What the fuck?" There was no reply, no echo. It was crazy to feel the way I did, but I couldn't deny it. Something was wrong. I stood motionless for what must have been a full minute, 2, 5. Then I said softly, "Kitty, treat, treat." Come on, Kitty. I know I never named you, but you can't hold this against me. She bought you, after all. And then the next day, "Kitty, treat, treat." My heart leapt in my throat. From an insane distance, I heard a little whir. "Kitty, treat, treat." I turned left and listened in the void, turning my ears back and forth. "Treat, treat." He wasn't coming. He couldn't find me. He sounded confused and frustrated. "Treat." I moved toward him, repeating the call, hearing his response echo closer and closer, but nothing changed. Just cold, roiling nothingness. Until I finally felt fur moving against my ankles. "Kitty!" I leaned down and petted him. "Christ, I thought I'd never find you." Yeah, I'll get you the treats I promised." Ever so carefully, so as to not kick him, I moved forward and found the wall. I didn't know which wall, so I groped along it. Until I finally felt a doorway. Instantly, it all became crystal clear in my mind, and I reached right out for a light switch. Searing white hit my eyes, but I didn't dare blink or look away. I was right by the living room door, exactly as I expected, and I looked back with dire confusion. Everything was normal. There was nowhere that I could have taken 6 steps, let alone 8, and nothing about the experience made sense. Kitty moved back and forth against my ankles, demanding his treats, so I went into the living room to give him his promised treasure. He was a Norwegian forest tuxedo cat, by the way. Still is. I moved through the house with the aid of several flipped light switches, finally getting the pee I needed. And then I crashed, only vaguely wondering what the hell had happened. I would have never questioned it again if I hadn't woken up to find a note on my nightstand. It was written in crayon, blue crayon. I looked at it, left, right, upside down, then finally understood. It said, "Phone kills you." I sat up ramrod straight in the bed the moment I parsed it. I probably should have done that sooner, actually, since the very existence of the note violated one basic fact. As of 11 days before, I lived alone. Phone calls, parents, police, pacing, pizza, Pepsi, Prison Break. I didn't watch it when it originally came out. I was decades late to the party. Sue me. Nothing came of the incident. Someone had left a threatening note in my fucking house while I'd been asleep, and I couldn't make sense of it. No one could. Eventually, as my pain over the ghosting faded, I watched all of Prison Break in 2 weeks, then all of Red Dwarf in another 2. with only Kitty to accompany me. I began to wonder if the note had truly been threatening at all. I'd been asleep. If the author of the note had wanted me dead, wouldn't I be dead? A phone kills you. I stared at it in my hand. A very real piece of paper with very real blue crayon. Blue crayon? Blue crayon. I stared off into space, haunted. Why did My phone had been dead. When I'd been lost in the dark, somehow, impossibly, reaching out for walls that should have been there, my phone had been out of power. Phone kills you. Oh my God. If I entertained the note a different way, not as a threat, but as a warning, then it was telling me something very different. The note might have been telling me that my phone, had it turned on, would have killed me? Why? How? I couldn't know, not yet. But if I took the note that way, it meant one thing was certain. Someone had been there, in the dark, watching me. In a rather manic fit of paranoia, I got up and ran about my house, using a measuring tape to gauge the span of every wall, every corner, every door jamb. I'd taken 6 steps that had been, in some inexplicable and impossible manner, wrong, and then I'd taken 8 back, still not finding the original wall, only finding my way left to Kitty's distant responses to my promises of 2-calorie treats. It wasn't possible. The measurements contained the lay of the house in chill winter daylight, and by their testament, it wasn't possible. I constrained my steps to minimal, mouse-like movements made timid by darkness. It wasn't possible. To the house, I said quite crassly, "Fuck you!" The house frowned. It had been built in 1917, long before modern human notions of space and time. It wasn't the house's fault. To Kitty, I said, "Dude, this house has a hallway." Kitty looked up at me with skeptical yellow eyes. "Not this one," I told him. "Another one. A colder one. Only slightly." He didn't really react. "I'll prove it," I promised. "But the question is, how?" He lowered his eyelids for a moment. "Right. I have to recreate the conditions. Good idea." "But did it require night?" I blocked all the windows by pulling down the blinds and drawing the curtains that she'd insisted on spending thousands of dollars on. The combined effect made it difficult to see in most rooms. But with all the internal doors closed, the main hallway was completely dark. It was enough. I groped my way around a few times before I realized I needed to be a bit more disoriented. To truly prepare, I emotionally let go, and I left my phone in my empty bathroom. After all, the note had been pretty clear. Phone kills you. Once that was done, I spun around several times, reminding me of the game the kids had played in the 90s. Spin around with your forehead on a baseball bat touching the ground, then try to run somewhere? To something? I couldn't really remember the rest of the game, beyond half-recalled images of some show with a far too cool theme song. A show called Wild and Crazy Kids. The oft-repeated names of the young hosts flashed in my head. From the original intro, Annette Chavez, Omar Gooding, Donnie Jeffcoat. Wait, Omar Gooding? Another image flashed in my head of a college girlfriend that made me watch every episode of Grey's Anatomy, but way after that, after college, a much later season. A character that had definitely been Omar Gooding, but at the time I hadn't. I was lost. I was lost in the dark. My compulsive need to explore this mystery suddenly seemed like a terrible idea. I was lost in my own house, with nothing but shifting darkness in my eyes and keening silence in my ears. out there somewhere, out there in the unknown void was, how did I even phrase it to myself? Someone that could see me, someone that was aware of me in some way, the thing that separates you and me. Hey, you're the one that asks why I know there's a hallway in your house. Is that I was ready to die. I was okay with it. I was even longing for it, in a wordless, unrealized sense. You've probably been there. There's a specific little span after a brutal breakup. It's after the end, but before the beginning of the next era of your life. It feels like a pit in your stomach, or a cheek turned against the sunrise. If it ended there, then she'd eventually hear about it, and feel bad. She'd regret her choice, the ultimate comeuppance. I did actually say out loud, "Fuck you." But I knew she couldn't hear me. I felt pathetic, but small, uncared for. And in that moment, I knew I was there. I'd found the hallway. It was slightly chillier than the one I knew, slightly quieter, slightly dustier. I stepped forward nervously, heart pounding in the dark. The only sensation I was sure was real. I wanted a wall. I needed a wall. Please, for the love of God. Not that I'd ever prayed, but I could really use you now. A wall, any wall. 8 steps, 9, 10, 30, 40. Holy shit. I was dead fucking certain now that I was no longer in the way of what I knew. 50 steps. I began to cry, noiselessly, quietly, alone, as I passed 50 steps. Nothing makes a man okay with admitting he cried like 50 unknown steps in the dark. Embarrass me, call me names, deride me, point and laugh. I didn't give a single shit, so long as I was seen. So long as we had the light that all humanity shared. My fingers hit a wall, and I sobbed and laughed openly until I began following it. It was no release, no salvation. I found a corner. I turned. My shin hit something, and I reached down in pain, only to find smooth painted curves unseen. A rocking horse. A rocking horse? I didn't own a rocking horse. We hadn't even had the chance to have kids. The dust was palpable here, squeezing between my toes. I was ready to die. I was terrified and I hadn't left Kitty enough food. But I was ready to be done. I called out treat several times, knowing he would never hear me this deep. A 1 in a million lifeline, asking God if it or he or she existed to throw me a bone. Nope. I let go of the wall. I wandered straight into the unknown void. The dust was my only guide, squeezing into my toes as I stepped less and less nervously. It embraced my feet, hugging my ankles and warmed my shins. I came to a stop as my knees found resistance against choking piled dust. Nose running, I looked this way and that, seeing nothing, hearing nothing. No, that's not entirely accurate. The void has a sound. The raw blankness of nothingness grates the ears and the eyes in a way that can only be conveyed to those who have felt it. You might have, once or twice. You're probably asking for that self-same reason. I was okay with dying. I had already committed myself to the unknown void in my very own empty home. Sorry, Kitty. I love you the way one living being loves another, but I can't love you the way a human loves another. I reached out for the ultimate blackness, the end of perception, the scythe-bearing, empathetic smile of death, and a hand closed around mine. I didn't panic, but I did hold my breath. I knew instantly who it was. Well, who it had to be, not who it turned out to be. To the darkness, I asked, "Why does phone kill me?" A voice whispered from the darkness, female and uncertain with words. If you know, if you see. She made a sound. I asked, "Ka?" Through our grasped hands, I could feel her nod. Pufka. She didn't need to elaborate. Pufka was some sort of crunching or implosion. Pufka was death. Death? I was ready for it. But not before I found out the identity of this girl in the dark. The only thing I knew was that, based on her warning, written in blue crayon, she didn't want me to die. That was enough. Someone cared about the basic human minimum. Someone had taken the 8 seconds required to scribble a note in blue crayon, warning that phone kills me. Someone wanted me to live. Holding her hand in the void, uncertain why I felt that it was risky to speak louder, I whispered, "Do you know the way home?" Her finger squeezed my hand. "Always have." Even now, I'm not sure how, but I could tell she smiled after that response. "Kitty's name is Jake." "Jake?" I laughed softly. "That seems right." She tugged and I followed. I could feel her taking steps, and I tried to do my best to emulate them, despite only feeling them through her gripping hand and outstretched arm. We walked for minutes, hours. We sat down to sleep for a time, and I woke up feeling exhausted, but mentally sharp, the way one does after a 6 or 7 hour sleep. She pulled me on, and I stumbled upstairs, along hallways, through a waist-high pool of warm water that smelled like unseen cinnamon. I dried out as we walked. I coughed as we crawled through tunnels that squeezed my shoulders into my chest. She never let go. Eventually, she paused, and I felt her moving rhythmically. She was riding the rocking horse. The darkness had become a sheath, then, for my mind, for my senses. Beyond that sheath, I knew she was looking up at me and smiling. I whispered, "Blue crayon." She laughed and nodded, unseen at that. We'd found the barest, most tenuous, most obscure understanding. We stepped and stepped and stepped. And bear with me here, we stepped. It was dark. It was cold. It was not, in the strictest sense, in every sense, possible. And then I felt Jake rubbing against my ankles, hoping for treats. My laughter broke the barrier in exactly the way I'd hoped to avoid earlier. With a snapping sense of physicality, I was back in the reality I'd always known. I reached over and flipped the light switch, completely aware of my exact location. The light was shining. The light was harsh. The light was white. I looked over, eyes brimming with pain, and I froze. "I don't know you, obviously. You're asking, probably jokingly, about the hallway in your house. If you're a lonely man, you've probably been feeling, so strongly, the same notions as I was entertaining. Was this a new opportunity for happiness? A new excitement? A new love? A girl out of the dark? No, nothing like that. By definition, the creature holding my hand was not something a human could love. If you're a woman, you've probably been guessing at the thoughts running through my head unseen, out of a sense of what men consider, secretly, but constantly, in that gross manner outside the light of polite conversation. But no, even then, the creature holding my hand was not something a human could feel, well, anything for. For it was undoubtedly a she, in the sense that humans call things by the tone of voice and the physical equation of form, had taken a massive, insane, and impossible risk by showing me the way home. By letting herself be perceived. I recognized this, even as I recognized her. I couldn't tell you how I knew or how I understood. It's a sense that humans must have had since the early days, since the time of caves and fires, since the time of lightning bolts and cheetahs. It was the uncanny valley. The what the fuck, the is that thing? Is it dead? Is it diseased? Is it right? The question can't even be asked properly. I almost retched. I almost pulled away and screamed. I almost ran for the hammer in the closet and bashed my own head in. The computational matter that made my brain certainly shrieked for these limited possible choices, leaning most toward the hammer. But her hand held mine, softly and fearfully. It was not possible to feel empathy for what I was seeing. I was ready to die. That gives a man clarity of emotion unlike any other situation. So I closed my eyes. All I was left with were her fingers clasping mine. She'd lived in the dark her entire life, so that was how I accepted her, how I rationalized her. In the black of my own shuttered perception, eyes held tight, fingers on fingers, heart racing to near nausea, I asked quietly, "Are you?" Through our fingers, I felt her move in a way that indicated a nod. Blue crayon. I'd known from the very moment I saw the note. Breathing deep a few times to stave off panic, I smiled, aware that she could see it. Blue crayon. For the next 5 days, I walked my own house with my eyes closed. It was a difficult adjustment, but I knew enough now to keep my own location specific. You can only find the hallway in your house if you're lost. That's the key. You have to lose your anchor. You have to be alone. You have to be without direction, without hope. You have to be ready to die. Or maybe you just have to be half awake and stumbling around in the dark. I haven't tried enough to know for sure. That weekend, I logged onto my family video call with another chair pulled up next to mine. I had Jake in hand, and he was purring. He loved her easily, because he already knew her. She had always been there, sulking about my home at night when I was asleep, when I wasn't perceiving. That was why Jake had gotten fat. She'd been feeding him. Even before the breakup, she'd always been there. She'd always been there with me, fearful of being seen, but loving, caring. She didn't create my hallway or your hallway. It was just a refuge she'd found. The same way yours find refuge in the hallway your house has. They don't abandon you. They don't give up on you. They love you, even though they can't be loved in return. Can't be looked at. Can't be felt for unless you close your eyes and try not to think about it. Their fingers are like ours. Their hands are like ours. And their faces are like ours. If they weren't what they were, they could walk amongst us without issue. It's not the shape that's the problem. I started the video call with my webcam aimed at the ceiling. My parents asked me what was going on with that, and I told them I had someone to introduce them to, someone they'd once cast out. Without quite realizing the existence they were giving her instead, I didn't blame them. They couldn't have known. None of us could have known. We'd always been told that ending a life was simple, painful but simple. "Mom?" I said with a smile, my eyes held tightly shut. "I found her. Do you recognize her?" I reached out and angled my webcam down. "I found my sister."